Welcome everyone. This is the last in the week-long series of videos that I was looking at an exploratory tester of an educational program. I was hoping to kill two birds with one stone in looking at this, as well as giving people exposure to some of the language while doing some activities aimed at the younger English speakers. So I'll be going back to more usual content, and if there's any requests, please leave a comment. In the fictitious scenario, there wouldn't be much difference between submitting the report on Friday afternoon and Monday morning, and which time could be spent completing the assessment, as based on what I've seen so far, the software's mature and comprehensive enough to be put into the recommended software list. Having no ads and having it also for downloadable for free is a bonus. If it was real, there might have been a few workarounds, notices written to address bugs and like the piano bug for the teachers, but all would be summarized as the general IT fix of turn it off and turn it on again, and they'll sort them through. But there's some bug fixes on the way from the developers, and I've got to take my hats off. They've been quite responsive to what I've been sending through and enthusiastic as well. A few of the bugs that were found are now set to be rolled into the main release, and I hope somehow we can get a chess introduction activity in there as well. So for this video, I'll be going through the test report with commentary, and afterwards I'd be happy to continue with any requests if anyone from the chat leaves anything, then whether it's GCompris or otherwise, whether it's word search, Tanglet, Connectogram. There's still quite a few tasks on the board for activities, so we've got 129 of individual activities that I haven't been to, and I know some of them are in depth and can be useful as well. So I'll see about doing some extra videos of that in the future and add them to the channel. I might publish them unlisted, so they might just appear. And I'll be looking at making other videos as well for software testing terms and give a bit to work. Let's talk about the word, its definition, and then expanding on that. But that'll be a bit down the track. It's not going to happen anytime soon. If a short-term task like this was completed, it would be a good time to have a retrospective within the team and think about anything which we could have done better. And I'll have a look later, but I'm pretty happy with what I've achieved and set out to achieve. So I might see about having themed things like this as well. And in the future, you can expect more videos about stories of testing that the fictitious company does in other sectors, and like construction, finance, and aviation, as a way to introduce you, the viewer, to terms that are used a lot in the jobs, and as they'll have some of their own acronyms and phrases. For the rest of this document, I'll read through the draft report that I was planning on publishing, and for people to download, I'll put it up on the website for the channel, and then I'll move over to testing, so if people wanted to read it in their own time. And so the GCompris 3.1 software test report, 17th of February 2023. It was completed by 268 Servo Testing Software Services, which is a fictional company for completing a fictional project for this YouTube channel. The purpose of the document is to serve as a sample example of software test report and as reading practice for technical document by people looking to learn English. This is a draft at the moment, hasn't been released, but when the one is released, it will be released under Creative Commons by attribution, non-derivative, non-commercial, no derivative, which means that you can download it for free and you can pass it on to other people for free legally. But it can't be modified or sold. The document's based on the software test report data in the data item description, which is a series of templates created from MIL Standard 498 and test which so that software test report was a standard document where each a data item description, sorry, that's what I'm getting at. The data item description has comments for what is meant to be put into each section of the and to assist readability, and I've included those below in italics. But I wouldn't have put it into a document if I was sending it off to a client. If you've got any questions, comments, or feedback, please send an email through. So the identification paragraph shall contain a full identification of the system, and because of the data item descriptions, the creator does have the opportunity to tailor it and make through, but what had been happening with the United States Department of Defense is they had all these contractors, and all the contractors had their own standards. So they created a series of templates and said, we're going to make these available to the world. And if you're presenting information to us, this is the format which we want you to send it into. And so that way it was fairly standardized rather than someone who's familiar with company A style writing, company B. So identification. This paragraph shall contain full identification of the system and the software to which the document applies. Sorry, I'll just go back to 498. Then they released it for free, unlimited to everyone. So if you're working on a project and you want some free templates, Mil Standard 498 is something to look at. I do understand it's been superseded, but I've found those as templates as a HTML file, downloaded them and used them a few times since. So this paragraph shall contain a full identification of the system and the software to which this document applies, including as applicable identification numbers, titles, abbreviations, version numbers, and release numbers. So I'd write this document here applies to GCompris version 3.1, and I've also built some of the, including some of the bug fixes that has been released and running on various hardware, including a desktop, laptops, tablets, as well as operating systems, including Linux, Mac OS, Windows, and Raspberry Pi. System overview. The paragraph shall briefly state the purpose of the system and the software to which this document applies. It shall describe the general nature of the system and the software, summarize the history of system development, operation, and maintenance, identify the project sponsor, acquirer, user developer, and support agencies, identify current planned operating sites, and list other relevant documents. So the purpose of the system is to assist learning and introduce young people to language, maths, music, and science through activities for people aimed 2 to 10 years old. The program has been in development for over 10 years as an open source program using the Affero General Public License version 3 within the KDE ecosystem. KDE have developed a lot of software, including a desktop application, but there's quite a few games there and they're pretty good. This project has been sponsored by a fictitious Department of Education to engage an experienced software developer to independently examine before the item is added to a recommended software list. They've engaged us to do a week-long review of the program and report back the software in general, and if there were any specific issues that they thought they might consider relevant to their decision to add it to the list. An installer is available for the latest stable release for each platform, and is also available for download on Google Play, for Android, and for phone tablets. Maintenance updates are done periodically. I think they might release every 3 months, but I'm not certain. Proposed operating sites are any computer tablet on department sites, as determined by the local administration, as well as people may install on their own devices. gcompris.net/index-en.html is the relevant application website. Document overview. This paragraph shall summarize the purpose and contents of this document and shall describe any security or privacy considerations associated with its use. This document shall detail the approach to testing, findings of this testing, report on recommendations to adopt or not for any issues identified. And I should say as well, there is no... I won't worry about it now. Reference documents. The section shall list the title, number, and revision and date of all documents referenced in this report. This section shall also identify the source for all documents not available through normal government stocking agencies. No external documents are referred to within this document. So, section 3, overview of test results. This section shall be divided into the following paragraphs to provide an overview of test results. 3.1. This paragraph shall provide an overall assessment of the software as demonstrated by the test results in the report. B. Identify any remaining deficiencies, limitations, or constraints that were detected by the testing performed. Problem change reports may be used to provide deficiency information. C. For each remaining deficiency, limitation, or constraint, describe 1. Its impact on the software and system performance, including identification and requirements not met. 2. The impact on the software and system design to correct it. 3. A recommended solution/approach for correcting it. So, overall assessment of the software. The software is a mature application and in our opinion suitable to be added to the recommended software list of the department. The newer activities added to the applications in the last major release, version 3.0, mouse click training, create fractions, find the fractions, discover international Morse code, compare notes, find tens complement, swap tens complement, and use tens complement, have all been examined in a manner similar to a playthrough a user would experience with a detailed eye, and no major issues identified. Some issues were identified and bugs were raised with the developers who have since released a new version of the software for testing. The issues are being fixed, although a new issue has appears to have been created. So, remaining deficiencies, limitations, or constraints detected by testing performed. This paragraph details deficiencies remaining in the software at version 3.1 release. At the time of writing, all of the fixes in place otherwise have been noted. So all have fixes in place unless otherwise notified. Those without fixes in place are expected to be fixed by the next maintenance release. A hose disappears in the control pipe on the second entry. The application meets the requirements provided the activity is not left and then re-entered. The impact is that entering the controller hose pipe activity a second time results in the activity not showing the pipe for the firefighter to put out the fire. Exiting the application and then re-entering and reopening the activity results in it being usable again. Numch primes level 8 doesn't accept 23 as a valid prime number and gives an error message. The application fails to meet the objective to teach users about prime numbers. The impact is minimal as the activity correctly detects all primes up until 23, which is the largest prime available to find in the activity. The software incorrectly shows an error message for 23, which is a real prime number, although the error message doesn't correctly show how 23 is not a prime number. So if you see the error message and you read it, you might go, that just doesn't make sense, and recognize it's a bug. So if the end user does identifies the issue, the teachers can explain it's a bug and 23 is a prime. C, option to override audio settings on entry to piano activity persists after the activity has left. Bracket, so even if the user quits on the initial dialog of the piano activity. This impact is that entering a musical app like piano will engage audio for the activity, and it continues to play audio for the activities afterwards, even if the app's global settings are set to disable voices and audio effects, so that the application, but not the phone system or tablet or computer system. The impact is the app may make noise when it's not otherwise expected, where it's otherwise expected to be quiet, and may lead to confusion as to why it's making the noise, because the settings show the app should be muted. Turning off the audio on the device settings can mute any app until the app is restarted, and restarting the app removes the override to play noises and resets everything back to as it was on the previous start. Audio doesn't play in the global settings. Mute noises on modules, barnyard animals, and memory with audio. So a fix was put in for the piano bug just described, but that looks like it's caused another issue, which is this one. And the impact is that if you're entering the activity requiring audio while the application settings say not to play audio, it just won't play any audio at all. You'll give it a chance to confirm you want to enter the application and override it, but it still won't play noise even though you've selected for that to happen. Exiting the activity and enabling audio in the application settings and re-entering the activity will result in audio being played. So, which would be the default, which is almost the reverse of the bug that was done before, where it would make noise but it wouldn't. Now it's not making noise in a separate task where it would have. A bug fix is yet to be implemented at the time of writing, but it's expected to be implemented by the next maintenance release. And there was one that I haven't shown yet, in that a particular picture as part of the activity photo hunter, it has an image not being displayed correctly. There's nil impact on the ability for the person to compute it. It's just it looks a bit weird. So the change would adjust the way the image is rendered, and it's recommended that teachers avoid the activity until a fix is implemented, although it is usable as is. So the impact of the test environment. This paragraph shall provide an assessment for the manner in which the test environments may be different from the operational environment and the effect of this difference on the test results. The main test environment was a laptop build using Linux OS. A small amount of testing was done on Android tablets, one with a smaller screen and another with screen approximately A4 sized. If I was doing detailed analysis of this, I might look at some of the apps where it might be looking to show small images on the tablet, see if they were readable and usable in those. Recommended improvements. This paragraph shall provide a recommended improvements in the design, operation, or testing of the software tested. A discussion of each recommendation and its impact on the software may be provided. If no recommended improvements are provided, this paragraph shall simply state none. Partway through the review, a Department of Education rep contacted me about an enhancement, as chess had recently become popular with the students, and for me to examine options to create new activity to help learn the game. GCompris version 3.1 has 3 activities for chess. The person can play a computer, they can play another human, or they can practice chess endgames. There's no documentation or activity to help users learn chess, and I considered 2 proposals to make to the developers. The first was to copy and paste a new activity for chess endgames, which uses the existing chess code exactly as is, and changes only the program source code for the new activity to be created, which features different initial board setups. So effectively, we take the on-code segment of beginning chess endgames, and crawl it chess beginnings, and have to do exactly the same thing with different icons, different text, and then different board setups. The current implemented code for the board and the AI player aren't changed at all. This option is the lowest risk option to quickly integrate it into the software. The second option is to create a new activity and modify the code which implements the activity, and possibly the AI player's code as well, so the user can move pieces without other pieces being moved, so they have a static and more customized environment to learn how the pieces move, and rules like check, checkmate, stalemate, castling, and en passant. I think there's some videos on the channel where I demonstrate this. I end up hacking up a demo. I'll see if I can put a link in as a card for people viewing. It's possible for the department to develop their own code to address this and copy each release of the software and add code to implement the activity, but the preferred method is to get the activity implemented in the official release. So there's only one version to install, and that matches the same version if any users install on their own devices. Detailed results. This section shall be divided into the following paragraphs to describe the detailed results for each test. Note the word test means a related collection of test cases. Given the size of the program with 180 activities and a time limit of a week to complete the test, it was infeasible to write and complete test cases for all activities, and an experience-based testing approach was used with exploratory testing that made sure the newest activities were examined first. As such, this paragraph has been tailored out. Any bugs identified have been detailed above in paragraph 3.1. So there's a project unique identifier for a test. Every test you make gets a unique identifier so you can know which one fails and passes. And each of the paragraphs will have a summary of test results, which will summarize the results of the test, including a possible table, completion status of each test case associated with the test, all results passed as expected, or some problems accounted, or some deviations in the test procedure were required. When the completion status is not as expected, the paragraph shall reference the following paragraphs for details. Problems accounted. The project unique identifier of the test case shall identify which one of the problems occurred, and it shall provide a brief description of the problem, identification of the test procedure or steps where they occurred, reference the associated problem and change reports and backup data as applicable, the number of times the procedure or step was repeated in attempting to correct the problems and the outcome of each attempt, and any backup points of test steps where they were resumed for retesting. Deviations from test cases or procedures. This paragraph shall be divided into subparagraphs to identify each test case and which deviations of each case and proceeded, because if you write your initial documentation and you go out to, say, the test range and book everything up 3 weeks in advance, if it doesn't go exactly to the documentation, you might want to say, well, we've got everything lined up, we're here on the day, this is what we're going to do instead. And this paragraph shall identify by project unique identifier a test case where one or more deviations, including the description of the deviations, for example, test case run in which the deviation occurred, the nature of the deviation, such as substitution of required equipment, procedural steps not followed, schedule deviations. Red line test procedures may be used to show the deviations, the rationale for the deviations, and the assessment of deviations, impact on the validity of the test case. Now we're getting close to the end. Section 5, test log. This section shall present, possibly in a figure or appendix, a chronological record of the test events covered by this report. The test log shall include the date, times, locations of the test performed, hardware and software configurations used for each, including applicable parts, serial number, model, manufacturer, revision level, calibration date of all hardware, and version number and name of software components used. The date and time of each test-related activity, the identity of the individuals who perform the activity, and the identities of witnesses as applicable. Some sections mentioned above have been tailored out. So that was the data item description saying what should be in the paragraph, and this is the report. Some sections mentioned above have been tailored out due to no specific need to have specific hardware or software configurations or witnesses. Testing was done on an ad hoc basis over the course of the week, and no specific timestamps were recorded. Sections which were not recorded as part of the 3.0 release have been marked as stable unless a test was run and passed. So all tested areas result in a pass. So I'm not going to go through and read each of those, but I've got a unique identifier for each of the activities, the activity name, a section marking whether it was done, yes, no, and another section indicating whether it was stable. If it was stable, let's go down to here. We mark it an S marked, and then there's nothing marked for whether the test pass or fail. So if I move the mouse or touch the screen, the anomaly was detected where the rectangle doesn't disappear. If a cursor quickly moves to the rectangle and then moves over another rectangle before one disappears, moving off and directly back over results in the rectangle disappearing, we recommend it proceed as is. And I haven't even filed a bug report for this one. It's not quite expected, but it's in no way is it worth trying to fix and then make that even harder if you, as the user will just move it back off and move it onto again. Control the hose pipe. If the activity is loaded and left and then reloaded, the pipe isn't shown, and activity is unusable. That's fine for the first entry. A bug has been raised and developers and a fix implemented for the next release. Mouse click training. When a person enters, there's no obvious indication for left click moves the animals to the pond and a right click moves to the tree, but help text does show this. The numbers with dice. The text says count the dots on the dice. The dice are shown from an angle that shows 3 sides, and dots from the sides are also shown. So on one side you've got 1 on the top and then 6 on the bottom, and then maybe there's 2 on the other side and then 4 on the other side. So if you're looking down, you're not quite looking from top down, so you might see the dots 1 and then 4 and then 2. And that way you are shown 7, but even though the program wants you to see, just report 1. Someone taking the exercise literally can get it wrong. Recommend that instead of this, that the activity of numbers with dominoes is used, and this doesn't contain the ambiguity. Play piano. For all music-related items that are opened when the sound is turned off in the application settings, the activity forces sound to be on for the activity and any subsequent activities, regardless of the settings, even if the user selects to quit when the music activity is first opened. The bug has been raised with the developers who've implemented a fix. Closing and reopening the application fixes the issue. So a whole bunch of activities weren't formally tested, but because they've been in for a few releases, they've considered successful. And find the fractions. It was noted that there was a level where the user has to enter a numerator and a denominator as to how many segments in the circle are completed, and that fractions can be simplified. So if there was a circle with 8 possible segments and 4 of them were filled in, then the user can enter 1/2 and it gets marked as correct. But it wasn't noted. It was just a minor thing. For the primes, if only at the last level, where if you attempt to read 23, it reports as not being a prime number and it's been patched and completed. Balance the scales properly. If you add many elements to the scale, result in the graphic showing weight hovering off the scale. Drawing letters. When drawing the letter K, it shows the bottom right line extending from the top right line, not the vertical line. It's not something I'd consider too major. On the screen, it's not like it's the letter K, but instead you're drawing a T. Discover International Morse Code. There's an on-screen keyboard for people using tablets. There wasn't a letter V. And there's also, when you go into the later levels, you put a space in between the dots and dashes to separate the word. If you use the on-screen keyboard, it uses a character other than a space. So when it goes to assess whether you've typed the wrong thing, it sees that character there and not a space, and doesn't mark it as correct. So using the space on the keyboard, the real keyboard will work if you've got the on-screen keyboard and another one. And the developers are aware, and a bug fix has been implemented, slated for the next release. I think it's, if you download the latest one, it'll be available now. Then that's all taken care of. The notes section, I don't have anything else to add for that. The section shall contain any general information that aids understanding of the document, for example, background information, glossary, rationale. It shall include an alphabetical listing of acronyms, abbreviations, and their meanings as used in the document, and list any terms and definition needed to understand the document. Appendices. An appendices may be used to provide information published separately for convenience in document maintenance, for example, charts or classified data. As applicable, each appendix shall be referenced in the main body of the document where the data would normally have been provided. Appendices may be bound as separate documents for ease of handling, and they shall be lettered alphabetically A, B, C. So I didn't quite want to add it there, but as these were developed as part of this project, I wanted to keep a record of them. So during the task, with the option to set up a chessboard and scenarios aimed at to help someone learn how to pieces are moved, they were developed and they're recorded below in Forsyth Edwards notation, FEN. I'm not going to go through and read each of those, but that describes the setup. So if you're setting it a chessboard, then the first thing from left to right, you'll see 7 empty spaces, and then have a king. Now, for the lowercase letter, it's the lowercase letters are for the black pieces, and the uppercase letters are for the white pieces. So first one farthest away we can see if we're playing for the black pieces. Sorry, if we're playing for white, then the furthest away is empty spaces and then a king. Then there's a row of pawns as would normally be set up in the game. 2 empty rows. Then we have 3 rows of pawns and then a king at the back row as well. So we've got 3 times as many pawns as the black player, and it's to get the user familiar with how pawns move around the board. I do have commentary for the results here, which I'll go down into. So for the horde, we've got 3 times as many pawns as the opponent, and the best way to win is to advance the pawns on the side away from the king and leverage our numerical advantage. For pawn promotion, the pawn has to capture a queen as the first move, and then advances to then promote itself to the queen. And then you can then checkmate the opponent very easily. For the rook, you move the rook across the board and then all the way to the back to then checkmate. You get to demonstrate it goes sideways and then forwards and backwards. The knight, the solution is you capture the queen with the knight from the bottom. Then you move the knight on the right hand side to threaten the king and force it to move again. And the third move is capturing the queen with the not pawn on the left. Capture the queen with the knight on the left. For the queen, you move the queen across the board and then move it forward. So it's very similar to the rook way to get checkmate, but it has to move diagonally. The bishops, there's one bishop that can be moved to threaten the king, which the opponent puts a pawn in the way as it's its only legal move. Then you can then capture that pawn and then checkmate. So you don't get to see both the light squared and the dark squared bishops move, but once you see that they move diagonally, it should translate easily. And overpowered. So there's no real single way to win this one, but the setup that the player starts with is a lot better than the setup the opposition starts with. So a person should be able to win relatively easily, or at least have fun moving the pieces rather than finding the way of endgame, starting from the beginning of the game. So that pretty much ends the result. I'll work on this a little bit more and publish it up to the associated website for the site. And anyone with any questions, comments, or feedback, please leave me know. I'll stick around for a little bit as I've just realized someone's shown up. No, it's showing back to concurrent viewer 0. So I'll finish the stream here and return back to normal programming of more generalized concepts. And I've got something a lot related to flashcards, and I'll see about doing some more longer format stories as well for the channel. And thank you for watching.